Hello, Naomi. Welcome to our online conference.
Thank you, Ines. It's lovely to be here with you.
So, I would like to start with the first question I have is because when we get our babies, when we become mothers and fathers, we don't expect what comes up for us, most of the time. So we hold our baby and then they grow and they become bigger and taller and they start to do things we're not so happy with. We get very frustrated. So why is it that we get frustrated with our kids so easily, more easy than with other people?
Well, first of all, it's important to know that we're not getting frustrated with the kid, but with ourselves. Mm-hmm. Basically, when our own child, that primal connection is not this perfect what we expected anymore, because they start walking, they start running, they start saying what's on their mind, and they're this, I call it, we raise a roommate. Yeah. But when you share an apartment with a roommate, then you choose them, hopefully carefully. And even then, you don't always know. But you give birth to a person who becomes your roommate. And you have no idea who it is. And you're so primarily connected to them that what happens when they're not being your dream child in a given moment, you are back to being the child and what your parent did to you in that moment. So if the child, for example, isn't listening to you, or you have the thought, he doesn't listen to me, then what really acts in you has nothing to do with the child, but one moment or many repeat moments with your parents when how they treated you if you weren't responsive, if you weren't doing what they said. And the anxiety and the fear that you experienced is alive, even though it's irrelevant in this moment, in this reality. So what I work with parents on is bringing them to the here and now and being able to see the child. But your question wasn't about that, just about why it happens. Why it happens is the simple answer is because we're human beings. And the way the mind works is in our primal connections where we're so in love and so attuned, we become reactive based on an automated system of our own childhood and what it was like to be a child. So whatever your child is, how you were. Mm-hmm. And that becomes very confusing, which is why I kind of mentioned in advance what we work on is to bring us back to the adult body and be here now. But it's unavoidable, that first reaction, until we actually learn to do that. That's what my book, Raising Our Children, Raising Ourselves, and the beginning has the SOL formula. And when I work with people privately in sessions on Skype or in workshops around the world, is especially on the S of the SOLVE formula, which is working on yourself, realizing what your mind is doing to you, how your mind is hijacking you from what's happening in this moment. Because all parents who sometimes have those unwanted reactions also have times where the child may be doing the same supposedly crazy thing and they're not triggered. And the only difference is they have used a technique or just are in a good mood, well-fed, relaxed, and deciding to be totally present so that the trigger machine has been put on hold and they're just totally here. Mm-hmm. And that's hard to do. So I'm sure you'll have more questions where I can talk about specifics.
Yes, the trigger machine you mentioned, this is our conditioned mind. Do you mean it like that? Like when something happens, the child hits the parent, for example, and the reaction is comes from the from the conditioning we have from our
Yeah,
own childhood.
absolutely.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely. But it doesn't mean that we have to act for that.
Mm-hmm.
What I teach is how to have control in terms of you being the boss of, do I do what the mind is automatically playing, or is there a me that's present and wise and knowledgeable who can stay connected with the child? Because when you look at the child, then you see that usually what you judge as misbehaving. So if you take your example, when, by the way, when parents learn from me from the beginning, parenting, their children don't hit them.
Mm-hmm.
It's not natural, and that's something to know, not to feel guilty about. Just, you know, we're learning it along the way. But to know that it's not natural, it's not necessary. It's not like every child has to have tantrums and hit the mother or father or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But when it happens, if we go into a reaction mode, then our mind hijacks us from actually noticing that the child may have a very valid reason to hit us.
Mm-hmm.
And we taught them without knowing that we were teaching them that this is one way to get what they want.
Mm-hmm.
It works for them. So even if what they want is attention and we give a negative attention, they're still getting us all wired and all present with them at that moment.
Yeah.
And there are other things that they get. We may get upset, but we may also want to distract them from whatever they're upset about. And they're not learning to actually feel their feelings and be aware.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like when if a child hits mom or dad, I always tell people to actually validate their feeling, they can express what they're feeling, but not, we can talk about that maybe later, not by blaming the child and telling the child we don't hit, because that's not anger, that's blame. That's judging the child, and next time they'll be more afraid, and it's actually the cause that they would hit you back again.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're not feeling secure and they're not rooted in themselves, and because they're told what they're doing is not all right, and they have decided to do it. It came from inside, so they need their expression to be validated, to be asked about. Oh, you're really angry at mommy. Tell me more about it. And listen to them. Listen to what's going on for them. You are the adult. The child is going through anger and need to learn it's fine to feel your feeling. Here, I want to know about it. Tell me about it. And listen and ask more questions based on what the child is saying, because you learn a lot more than from any session with me or anybody.
Mm-hmm. And the same, I think, when the children are hitting each other, like the brothers fighting. So,
well, that's a whole other subject, sibling rivalry.
Okay.
And what I teach about sibling rivalry is to never take sides, to always know there is always a valid reason for everything a child does, whether it's hitting the brother or hitting you or spilling some, there's always, or being defiant or having a tantrum. There is a valid reason. When we're in a reaction mode about ourselves, our own childhood comes back to us, not consciously, but activates the anger and the wanting to stop the child from what they're doing, then we don't see the child. We're not connecting with the child. Our main purpose is to connect, to be present, to connect. Connecting is loving. And when you do that, then you see that the child who hit his brother has a valid reason to do so from their point of view and what they know works. You weren't there to help them. They're alone in a playroom or out in the yard or whatever. The other child probably did something that limited them or invaded their recreation or their game or whatever it is. And so what I teach about siblings, maybe it doesn't belong today, but I'll say briefly, I teach how to come in and ask questions that get both of them equal opportunity to completely express themselves and never be judged for anything. So they're free. So their sense of being able to express and to feel is always safe and free.
Mm-hmm.
So when children do that, when they get a chance to tell what happened to them, and here, you know, and I always say to parents, when the other child wants to interrupt, say, no, that's not what happened. I always tell them, tell the other child they'll get a turn. They'll get to do the whole telling their own side over and over again. I tell them, you just listen to each child to the end, validating their reality completely. Then you listen to the other child who has a totally different story. That's not what happened. And then you go back and listen to the first one who now has something to say about what the brother or sister are not saying right. And you keep listening to them, because self-expression, when they express and tell you what happened and how they're feeling, then they're healing themselves. And often it's funny because most parents tell me when they do that, and when I did that with the children, they get bored with it before they're done. You know, they want to go back and forth, correct each other for a while. Often, I mean, once in a while we need to find a solution for something, but often one of them after a while just is bored of the process because they're healed. They said everything. And they just say, okay, I had enough. Let's go out to the, you know, and play ball or whatever.
It's like when they're hurting somewhere and they sit on the lap and are comforted, and then suddenly they say, okay, I go.
Exactly. And it goes when you're fully present and you fully acknowledge them and they get to cry or rage or whatever they need to do. It's so easy for them and actually very short.
Yes.
It doesn't take much. I have this story that I told on a couple of talks about, I have, you know, family intensive, when families come to my house or I go to their house, but mostly they come here. I live in a beautiful place and I have a little building they stay in the yard, and it's beautiful forest here. So we had a family here and the children were playing together in the bedroom, jumping on the bed or something. And the mother had a session with me, was working on something. And one of my children came out of there. He had tears in his eyes and he was telling me how he disturbed and how the oldest kid told him that if he disturbed 5 times, he would have to leave. And he disturbed 5 times and had to leave, and of course felt sad that he had to leave. And all I did is I picked him up and hugged him and said, you really wanted to stay there? And he said, yes. And I said, and you couldn't control yourself in whatever you disturbed? And he said, yes. And then I said, when you grow older, you'll have better control over yourself. You know, encouragement for the future, because he may be thinking, you know, I'll never amount to anything. You know, I'll always be thrown out. I can't do it, or something like that. So I addressed that, and I told him how much I love him. And when I told him that I loved him, he said, even when I disturb. And I said, yes, it's nothing to do with it. I love who you are. Something like that. And he stayed in my lap for about 2 minutes through this conversation and another half a minute, totally relaxed. And then he got up and he went to the playroom and played by himself. And I kind of snuck in and looked after a while. He was totally calm and happy. So it doesn't even take long if you give the outlet for the expression and you make it right. You let them know, yeah, how you feel inside is right. And it builds their self-confidence too, because they know how I feel inside is right.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, you mentioned that hitting and tantrums are not natural. So this is very different from what many books tell us. So what do you mean by that? It's not natural.
Well, I don't mean they're not natural. Human beings need to sometimes cry and express themselves in rage because they believe horrible things. It's not that what happens is naturally, it's like the banana breaks, and we know it's not a big deal. But for the child, he tells himself this horrible story that the banana is no good anymore, and it was so nice when it was whole, and there is no more bananas or whatever, and has the rage. So I'm not saying they would never cry or have, but the idea that 2 to 3 years old or 2 to 5 years old naturally have tantrums, that's not true. That I question. They don't naturally have tantrums. If we provide a life with a lot of frustration, if we model tantrums when we don't get to have our nap, or things don't go our way, daddy was late and I missed, or I'm late to my yoga class and I'm all angry at him, or we have a tantrum toward the child because they're not listening to us and we wanted to have dinner now and they're not ready to go, and we're having a tantrum and we're yelling and saying all of that, which is fine, we're human beings, but they're learning it. It's not that it's natural as innate. And I never mean by that one should never have a tantrum or that we should ever suppress it. You can have a tantrum, they can have a tantrum, we're all the same. Just realize they're joining the human community, and tantrums are simply believing some horrifying catastrophe story inside the mind, because the broken banana does taste the same and it doesn't actually make a difference. It's not actually a problem. It's only a problem for the child because he make up a story. And for an adult, it's a problem that I didn't get to sleep much at night because I had to breastfeed 7 times. And I'm I didn't sleep, I need to sleep, take the baby so I can sleep. And I have a tantrum over that. So, for us is a broken sleep, for the child is a broken banana, but we're the same. And it's not that's an innate characteristic from age 2 to 5. So, and I'm saying that also, Ines, because some parents, if they believe that it's just natural to have tantrums, they don't look at the cause and it being kind and relieving the cause. Because the child may have a lot of tantrums because a lot of life he feels helpless. He has a little baby brother and he's not getting enough attention and he's worried that he's not loved, and we're not addressing it. Or we're leaving the children to play together longer than they can handle. The older child doesn't want or capable of being the babysitter of a 2 years old, really frustrated. So it's not, we need to listen and to address the cause. Because if we're saying to a child, get ready, we have to be at your class, or we have to go because I need to go shopping. Well, maybe we burnt the rice, I call it. We're putting the rice on. We don't blame the rice if we burned it, but we didn't run the morning preparation to leave somewhere in a calm, giving enough time, handling all issues in a way that the child will want to go and will be ready. And then we're angry at the child rather than noticing ourselves and allowing ourselves to deal with our own feelings. Well, we need to we cause a lot of tantrums. And when we are the cause of tantrum by saying to a child no all the time, when we could say yes, is another example. Being willing for the child to break the cardboard that something came in, an UPS. A child gets into it, child tears it, child breaks it to pieces, and we're busy thinking, oh, I will have to clean up. Well, yeah, I don't want to clean up. So you have a tantrum about not wanting to clean up. Yeah. The child has a tantrum over, but I want to play and create something out of this cardboard. Why should you get your tantrum and what you want controlling what he wants? Yeah. They're both valid, except you're the adult, and cleaning up after a child is being creative with the cardboard or the popcorn inside or whatever. He's busy meanwhile. Gives you actually a little time for yourself. He's busy. Wonderful.
Yeah.
And cleaning after. So just noticing that tantrums are equally us and them. The more we have tantrums, the more they will have tantrums, and how much we're causing their tantrums by thwarting and getting in the way and, being an obstacle for what they want to do. And I'm not one who advocates children should do always whatever they want to do. We're leaders, and there are boundaries and limits and life. And when it comes to autonomy, we need to arrange life in terms of safety and availability such that, for the most part, they can run their own life from inside and not be thwarted.
Yeah. And with older kids, like 5 years old or 6 or 7 to 10, they can still have tantrums when they don't get what they want, but we can't always allow everything they want. They want to eat tons of chocolate, or I don't know. So we have to stop them at a certain point. And I think there's much confusion in parents when to say stop, when to do that.
Yeah, and most of the time, what I teach, you don't have to say stop, because you arrange life such that you don't need to control, like baby proofing with the young ones. So there is a child proofing in the same way, but at the same time, you're the leader. But when you're the leader, what you're modeling, if a 10 years old is still tantruming if they don't get their way, really look at where you're tantruming when you're not getting your way, especially with a child. When you say to the child, I need you to do your homework right now, or I need you to go to bed right now, it's late, you'll be tired tomorrow. And you're getting upset because you're not getting to control the child, you're not getting your way, or something for yourself that he needs to cooperate for you to get, then that's where they're learning it. So one of the big things that I teach parents is to not teach children to want. And it starts with modeling, because in modern life, where we have such abundance of everything we want, we have become wanting machines. That's one of, it's like, notice how much of your life you show to your child that, okay, now I want this, and I go and get it no matter what. And how much we ask the child, what do you want? What do you want? And how much, if they cry because they didn't get something, we give them something else. We distract them. We try to stop their crying as if they can't handle it. So you see, there are two sides to it, because sometimes you cry, grandma didn't come, on things that we aren't thwarting, that we aren't the one causing. Grandma was coming for a visit. She's sick, she's not coming. We were going to go to the beach. It's pouring rain. We're not going. We ordered this beautiful cake for the party, and the company had a flat tire on the way, and it's not going to get here today. Or we burned the cake that we made ourselves. There are things that happen, and so many parents are teaching children to tantrum by making the tantrum reward them. Like, if you cry hard enough, I'm going to give you something. That cake is burnt, but here we'll have ice cream instead. Or grandma didn't come, but here we'll do something else. We'll go to the zoo. And the child is learning, I must get something. I must get what I want, or something equivalently wonderful, because I can't handle my feelings. I can't handle feeling rage, or feeling helpless, or feeling like I want to cry. While if grandma didn't come and the child is crying and we're with them, it's like the story I demonstrated before. Usually the crying doesn't even last that long. It's like we hold the child and say, I know, you really love grandma. And what do you like to do with her the most, that you mostly miss? When do you think she would come? Toward the end, when they start brightening up, you can ask a question like, how long do you think she'll be sick? Oh, yeah, she has a cold. So maybe 3 days, maybe a week. So maybe she'll come next weekend. What do you want to do with her? Like, what were you going to do this time? And now they're getting excited, but only after they really finished crying and telling you what they're missing. So allowing crying, allowing expression, not immediately plucking the child out of it by compensating with something or distracting with something as if he can't handle not getting it.
Yeah, I think it's harder to let the crying, to allow the crying when it's the parent's fault. You know, if I say no more chocolate and the child is crying, so I'm the bad the bad one. You know, so and then allowing the pain that I caused to be is harder.
Well, let me give you two answers for this. I love that you ask that. One is don't have chocolate at home. I'm saying symbolically about anything, and that's what I mean. Make the situation of life such that there are fewer tantrums. It's very hard to resist chocolate when it's there. I know it's hard for me. I'm a chocoholic. If it's in the house, it's very hard to avoid it. So if you want the child to not have candy, don't have candy in the house. It's very simple. Have the special candy, hopefully organic and not with sugar. Once in a while, buy it, eat it all, finish it, be done with it. So that's part of the answer. Set life up such that there are fewer such struggles. The other one is if you have to forbid something and be in control, I really recommend to not have that in general. But if you have to, because I'd rather the child eat some more sugar and we don't have the struggle. The struggle is more poisoning of the child emotionally than the sugar physically. And I'm the first one. I don't touch sugar and I don't give my children sugar. I didn't give them when they were children. So I'm all for that. But if you have to do that, it's like what we talked about before. And I like to add to that, validating the child very likely hateful feeling toward you. So that's why when you say, when I'm the one causing the tantrum, then I even say like, yucky mommy, you don't like when mommy takes something like that away from you. Yucky mommy. Tell me how much you don't like when I take it from you. Let them express their hate. I hate mommy. Yeah, I know, especially when I take your chocolate away. Tell me more about how that feels. Let that be. So it's not some, hidden agenda, pink elephant we're not talking about, that the child at that moment hates you. And then they wouldn't hate you because you're letting them express it. And you're expressing, if they can't talk yet, you're putting it into words. And if they talk, you're putting some words that open the floodgate of their verbal expression so they can do that. Or they can show you. You can give them a little pillow and say, show me what you want to do to mommy for taking the chocolate away, depending on their age and temperament. Or draw it for me. Some children like to draw. One of my children drew 7 pictures about how he hated something his piano teacher did to him, what he wanted to do to her. All these violent pictures he was creating, he called it Sarah's bad day. And all these horrible things that happen to her. She gets up in the morning, she tries to turn off the alarm clock and it falls on her foot, and then she gets up and the coffee spill and the fire goes. I mean, all the way to a catastrophic disaster. So, and then it's not enough that he drew it. I had him tell it to me again and again until he was bored telling it. It was like 7 pictures that he was telling me in each picture what happens in Sarah's bad day. By next week, he was going to his lesson and he was loving his teacher and had no problem.
Yeah. So what about the things I can't put away, like the TV or... we don't have TV, but most of the families do, I think. So,
well, they should put it away. Not having it is a way of putting it away. So, I work with people on the thought. I do the work of Byron Katie with people.
Yeah.
So I can't put the TV away. Is that true?
Yeah, it's not obviously.
It's not any different than the chocolate. I've never had TV in my home in my life. I put it away for good. When I was 20 years old, and people started having TV in their home, and I just said, no, I'm not having this. Addictive drug. It's right here all the time. Very difficult for children to not be seduced by it. Not any different than chocolate.
Yes.
So why have it there? And some families that I work with end up moving the TV to their own bedroom in a closed closet and not reachable and not plugged in. So that maybe after the bigger children who sleep by themselves are asleep, or they went to grandma, you open your closet, you plug your TV, and you do your thing if that's what you want to do as a couple in your time alone. But on a regular basis, TV in the living room, I think, is very difficult to raise children with that.
Yes. Yes.
So I like to be kind to the child and to myself and reduce the struggles by making the environment such that you don't have to say no.
Yeah, but it's the same with the smartphones and so on. They're everywhere.
Yeah, today technology makes a lot of difficulties like that. And I see a lot of parents who don't have the smartphone when the children are around. So it depends what you want, or have it and let the child have it, and make sure to lock whatever programs you don't want them to have. I don't like to tell parents what to do. It really, there are pros and cons with young children being engaged with smartphones. I don't take sides on that too. I see some families who successfully have no gadgets with their children around until they're preteens or something. And I see others who let them have it from the beginning with not much limits. And I see others who create, 1 hour a day, you can have it. And then, yes, if the child cries, you be with the crying. But there is a problem there, because if you're the police and the child is crying because of you, they're more likely to not feel connected in that moment and to harbor over years a sense of resentment that'll show up when they're teenagers and when they're young adults. So my preference is to have the connection in an environment that has fewer of those. But as they grow older, they can be engaged in understanding why and in choosing how much. Like when my 14 years old middle son, that's when video games and internet was already available. And so for me, when they were young, the problem didn't exist yet. But when they were teenagers, it did. And I told him, why don't we have a conversation about it? And why don't you provide me, look online for articles that explain the pro and con of variety of types of video games. And we can read it together, watch some YouTube conversations about it together. And then you'll decide, So I engaged him in actually finding why it's not good for him. Or what part of it are good for him. And he came to the conclusion that he should do it, I think, an hour a day or 2. I don't remember. There was some time limit and I trusted him to do that. It was his decision, and he had now the knowledge. So there are lots of ways to handle these things. But when they're little, I would say make the environment such that you are always on the child's side, that he doesn't experience you as the police and the enemy and the thwarting what he wants.
Yeah.
For the most part. And of course, if he runs into the street, you're going to stop him. You're going to grab him no matter how much he screams, right?
Of course, yes.
And you'll tell him, I was so scared. I'm so glad you're in my arms. I'm still trembling. I got so scared. I thought something will happen to you. And, never, we don't run into the street, and always be with mom. It depends on their age, what you explain.
Yeah. So what do you say to parents that read your book and they have children already and they think they have done so many things wrong? And how can we correct?
That's just about everybody. And I'm coming up with another book soon. I'm working on one. And I recommend to take my 3 days workshop. And if you don't have one in your area, contact me and create one. It's probably the best thing you can do in the cheapest way, because I give a lot of people over 3 days. I have the basic course and I have the advanced course. So maybe a year later or a month later, and some people like them weekend after weekend, and they keep me in their city or state or country to do the basic course, and then the advanced course is also 3 days, very thorough, with a lot of self-exploration and learning about the self and about the childhood and releasing all the things that hijack us.
Mm-hmm.
But the most important thing about your question is that parents feel guilty, start blaming themselves, which stops them from learning something new because they're too busy, again, like what we spoke before, with the reaction, with the pain from inside. And that pain has to be dealt with in order to be free to learn something new. So, I mean, we're not going to deal with it now. I would do a lot of work with a person where they get to feel those reactions and to notice that what causes them is going to that scenario in childhood unconsciously, or reacting from that place rather than being present. But the more important generic thing that I think you're looking for in your question is the forgiving yourself and the realizing there is no way on earth you can raise a child who has no emotional problems. I have not met a person without emotional problems. I always ask when I stand in front of an audience, how many of you had perfect parents? Usually it's 0 or 1, often a man, who fools themselves and raise their hand as a righteousness. I had it all good. Still believing, that somehow his parents were the only ones. By the time I finish this little monologue, they take their hand down and feel, if anything, a little embarrassed. And then I ask, and how many of you, the children, turned out perfect? Had no trouble, no traumas, no struggles as children, and are happy-go-lucky, this person who knows no problems. And how good would that be anyway? How would you be able to handle life? And of course, nobody raises their hand. On that one, nobody, not even the occasional audience of few hundreds with one person. Not on any of you are perfect. So that usually gets the one guy on the first question putting down their hands, because if none of us are these perfect people, then how could our parents be? Mm-hmm. And then I ask them, so what makes you think you can be the first parent in human history to raise the first child in human history who turns out somehow flawless, emotionally unharmed ever? Not possible. Mm-hmm. Done. Give up on that. So you're free to learn how to do the best you can, forgiving, loving this moment, the destruction, the traumas, the fallouts, the pain, the scraped knee and the scraped heart. It's all part of life. It's all what I call grist for the meal. You did harm to your children, you yelled at them, you angered at them, you controlled them. They'll have something to work with their therapist. Or if not with therapist, with themselves, with self-help book, with the work of Byron Katie, with their yoga instructor, with their meditation. What are we here to do if not to self-actualize? Uh-huh. And if there is no material with which to self-actualize, how would you? Yeah. And if you never suffered as a child, how would you handle life? Mm-hmm. That's why we get such an epidemic of anxiety in young people today. Professors and universities are saying they can't handle these kids anymore. Kids can't handle getting anything less than the best grade. The suicide rate goes up. They can't handle anything, not getting what they want, not being perfect. Come on, life is life. It's full of all kind of experiences. There is tsunami, there are earthquakes, there are, violence, there are human beings, there are animals, there is bee stings, there's girlfriend leaving you, boyfriend leaving you. Mm-hmm. Somebody else loves your girlfriend and she goes with him. That'll come later. Being fired by your boss, not getting along with your roommates, somebody stole something from you. How can you be prepared for that if parents provide their children a panacea, a non-existent type of childhood without real human beings? So the parents are real human beings. I'm not talking about severe abuse and situation where we have to separate children from their parents. Of course, I never mean that. But as loving parents who read my book or books like that, who are trying to learn to do better, all you have to do is realize that there is actually nothing to forgive, that when you did what you did the best you could. Not only you did the best you could with what you knew how, but you may have known to do better, but couldn't. Because the mind hijacked you and you didn't yet have the tools that someone like me teaches, someone like you teaches, the tools to realize that the thinking and the reaction isn't truth.
Yes.
Isn't the place from which to react. You didn't have that tool. You didn't know. So you were always innocent. You hit your child, you yelled at your child, you forbade them, you forced them to go to a class they hated and suffered in or were bullied in. You made all kinds of mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
You let them cry as a baby, cry themselves to sleep by themselves, or you didn't breastfeed, or whatever you did. So that's the life this child got. That'll be the grist for their meal to work on, to recover, to learn themselves. It'll make the story that makes their life and their evolution.
Yes. And
it's all good. It's all good.
Yes.
It's all to love.
Yes.
That's what to love next.
Yes. And I think as soon as we as parents recognize these mistakes or whatever we did, this behavior, we can talk to the kids about it. I didn't know it better. I meant for the best. I'm sorry, whatever.
Apologize, acknowledge, and ask. Tell me how it felt for you. Let them express themselves.
Yes.
Be interested, not preaching.
Yes.
Not even preaching your apology, just heartfelt.
Yes.
Oh God, I totally lost it and was in my mind and yelling. Oh my God, I really regret doing that. I'm sorry I did that. Tell me how it was for you.
Mm-hmm.
And even teach them how to help you next time. I tell parents, once they learn the technique with me, how to do the solve formula and the work and question their thoughts so they bring themselves into a peaceful place in testing kind of time, I tell them, give your child a little white handkerchief or put notes all over the wall. And the child, tell them, when mom forgets herself and is yelling, wave the flag in front of her eyes to remind her, or say, if they're older, mom, think, or remember what Naomi said. Sometimes some mother told me that the child said she had a little post on the fridge that reminds her how to question her thought and become peaceful. And the mother started yelling, and her daughter, I think it was a girl, and she said to her, Mom, go read on the fridge first. And also to not be quick. One of the biggest mistakes we make is we rush. And the first, when we're upset, the first thing that it's like a computer, the thought that comes on first is always a lie. It's not true, not relevant, not what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's the thought, he should listen to me. He should do as I say. Mm-hmm. Why did he do that? He shouldn't have spilled the milk. Milk was already spilled. Of course he should have spilled it. It already happened.
Yeah.
So saying it shouldn't, it's like saying it shouldn't rain when it's raining, or there shouldn't be tsunami when you have to run up. If you didn't believe that tsunami happened, you wouldn't pick up your kids and run up the hill.
Yeah.
You'd be talking to tsunami and say, hey, no, don't come. You shouldn't be coming. When we deceive ourselves, we're not productive, is what I'm trying to say with this.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you a story, an example, if that is useful at this moment, or you can ask the next question, whatever works.
Tell me, it's good.
What?
Yeah, just tell the story, please.
So there was this is a client who called me on Skype and told me this. There was a father with 3 children, 3 or 4, I don't remember. 2 or 3 of them were already in bed. It was like bedtime. And one of them, the 6 years old, was down in the basement painting and go to school in the morning. So the father goes and say, we're already all in bed. I need you to get ready for bed and stop painting now, in a very commanding way. And the child was busy, wasn't listening. So he yelled more and more and more, and it didn't help. So he finally got down there, picked him up forcefully, and kind of threw him angrily, pushed him into the bathroom, closed the door, said, come on, now get ready for bed and be there quickly. We're reading books in bed. And he went back to the family bed where the other 2 girls were. And he was reading them a book, and then he noticed time goes by, that 6 years old is not showing up. So he's still in the anger because he's believing the thought. He should do as I say, he should get ready or he'll be tired to get up to go to school. All the stories that we were processing with him at the session. But he was, at that moment, he believed the thought, because we didn't do the work on it yet, that the child should obey him. So when he looked through the crack, he said there was a crack and he could see, what he saw was his child laying on the bathroom floor singing. What a fantastic self-healer, right? Yes. Anyway, but the father didn't see it this way yet. So he was telling me how he opened the door and a big struggle, and he yelled at his child, and it took an hour before the child was in bed. And of course, when you do the work on it and you look, so I take him through all the stages. The first stage, in each stage, you could deal with your feelings in an honest way and look at, he should listen to me, is that true? I mean, I was doing some art. He will be tired tomorrow if he went to sleep half an hour later. Is that true? And it's, you find all these things that feed your anger, that he went up to bed an hour and a half late instead of half an hour late because of creating struggle. So initially he could have just said to the child, and he realized this, he said, not me, without the thought that about the tiredness and he should do it now because I tell him a lot of that. He said, without the thought, I would tell him, your sisters and I are already in bed. I see you're very busy. When you're done, please go to the bathroom and join us in bed. And that probably would have been the end of it. But let's say I like to work with people at, okay, you didn't do that, because we all fail. So if you failed that one, and now you come to and you do this violent thing, and you drag him to the bathroom, and you push him in there, close the door. Now you come and you see the child singing on the floor. So again, we question our own thinking. What got him angry is the thought he shouldn't be singing on the floor. And he should be getting ready. And he should be doing what I'm telling him to do. So I'm not going to go through the whole process that I went with him through. But basically, after questioning this thought, he found the following, that not only you should sing on the floor, but there were so many good reasons why he should. He was stressed out by his father's aggression toward him. He was doing healing for himself. He was calming himself down. He wasn't fighting with his father. He was sparing daddy doing lullabies because he's already doing the lullabies for himself. That's 5 things right there. What an amazing kid who didn't come out storming, go tell mommy, go scream at daddy, go hit them, go hit one of the children. He took care of himself like an enlightened being, so to speak, so much more mature than the father. He was with reality. Okay, am I in the bathroom? He didn't run back to finish his painting.
How can it be creative?
Just like, okay, I can't go back to the bathroom. Dad will be even more angry. Daddy's angry. What can I do to calm myself down and to get ready for bed in the best way? And hey, laying on the floor and singing. Wow.
Yeah.
What a great thing to do.
Yes.
And I told the father, he thought, well, maybe then without my story, I would have joined him singing. And I said, yes, and probably be more respectful if you didn't. And you just let him, don't enter his party and hijack it and make it yours. I think that's not respectful for most. But he knows his kid better. If that would have been the way to kind of make up and feel good, fine. I know my children, especially the one who would have done something like that, would have had a tantrum if I joined him singing. Like, it's I'm alone in the bathroom, it's my singing now. So it depends on the relationship and on the child. But one way or the other, the child would have finished singing and would have come to bed, and probably the whole thing would have taken another 10-15 minutes, not an hour, and no struggle and no yelling and no upset.
Yes.
So lots of, that's one of lots and lots of stories I have from sessions and family intensives and workshops.
Very beautiful story.
Yeah.
Yes. So I wanted to ask you about your self formula. Can you tell us a bit what it's about?
Well, the self formula is a way to hold yourself from that first reaction. So the S is the self-talk, and when you have more time, when one has more time, it's the part where you do the inquiry, which for me is if you want to do it fully later, to write down the thoughts that you believe that caused your anger, because the child never caused your anger. It's your thinking about the child that caused the anger. So that's the S. But when you do it in the moment, then the S can be simply self-care. It could be just taking a deep breath and bringing yourself, or even imagining. I think in the book I say you can imagine getting angry at your child, so that you self-express without hurting him. You can also say something about your anger as long as you express yourself. I'm feeling angry because I'm telling myself that you shouldn't be doing this. But most parents cannot quite get there that fast. So the quick way, if you need to respond right away, is deep breath, noticing your child, being present to your child, which brings you to the A, which is attention. Put attention on your child. That takes you away from the attention on your own reaction, on this trigger. It's like, leave the trigger alone. Here is your beautiful child. You're nuts about this child. They're so beautiful. Here they are, sitting in the basement painting, or spilling water all over the kitchen, or whatever, the blocks that you just put in the basket. Spreading them all out exactly when you're ready to leave, or
fighting.
Whatever it is. So that's the attention. And then the L is listening. So now you ask questions instead of preach and tell what you should do. Oh, you shouldn't do that, and you're wrong, and go to your room now. Instead of all of that, just listen. Ask question. Oh, I see that you tried to drink some milk and it spilled. Or I see you guys are having a problem. Would you like to tell me about it? In case of sibling rivalry. So that's the L. The V is validate. So that means being an active listener. I hear that this and that happened to you. I hear that you really wanted this, and when your brother or your sister came in, this happened. So whatever the validation. And the E is empower, which is kind of what our talk is about. How do we raise children who are emotionally resilient? So we don't have to fix everything. We don't have to come across like, okay, let's fix it. Let's stop everything. I'll give you this, and then you don't have to fight over that. We don't need to do that. We can empower, can be doing nothing. Just the fact that you're letting the crying, the tantrum, the upset, the fact that you just, let's clean the floor. It happened to me the other day. treat them like a guest. If your guest broke a glass, you wouldn't be angry at them. You would say, never mind, don't worry about it. It can happen. I'll clean it up. So that already empowers. But sometimes the empower could be active. If something happened and the child is injured, and you may say, it hurts a lot. Are you thinking it would hurt for hours and hours and for days? It won't. Or what I said to my child, as you grow older, you'll be able to control yourself better. Or asking children who are fighting, do you see something you would like to do that would solve this problem to both of your satisfaction, or how to prevent it next time? So you empower them to come up with solution. You don't solve it for them, but you show that you believe there is power. That bell that's ringing is my cat asking to go out. So I'm going to leave for just a second. Sorry about that. So, because otherwise the cat will have a tantrum. No. So did I answer the question?
Yes, I think I wanted to ask about the sibling rivalry that you mentioned. Is it natural for kids to have that, or do you think it's also what they see, what we do?
Well, it's both. It is completely natural. In fact, it's our mistake to expect siblings not to fight.
Okay.
It's like we fight. We have problems in relationship. Our children did not choose to have this roommate. Okay, yes. Now they have another roommate. Often they're too close in age, too young. A 6 years old is not a good babysitter for a 3 years old. They need autonomy. The other child gets in their way, which is also why I don't recommend daycare and young children playing with the same age, because nobody can help anybody. They're all blind in the same spots. So you leave children to play so that you can make dinner or you can do your email, and you leave them there for too long because they can't. So it's more like realizing, they're going to fight because they're two different human beings. And when you have a roommate, you sometimes fight, or even a person you chose to spend your life with, a husband, a wife, a partner, you sometimes fight. How can you expect children who have very few tools to handle disagreements to not fall for the hitting each other? They don't have too many choices if you don't offer more choices. So I teach to offer more choices. The first thing is tell your child, when you guys had enough of each other and have a problem, call me. And when they call you, turn off the fire, hang up the phone, and be there within seconds. Because for them, it's a long time. If you say, just a minute, that doesn't work. By then, they'll hit each other. It's too late. So make them calling you be successful for them in terms of how fast you show up, and in terms of not taking sides, but helping to resolve the issue. Most of the time, the resolution is taking the younger child out of there.
Okay.
Unless the older child wants to be with you, and then maybe the younger is going to be with daddy or the babysitter, or you have to do some other arrangement, or postpone it, or explain when you'll be able to do it. Most of the time, the younger one is disturbing the older one. And the older one is right to lash out for what he can do if you're not there to solve the problem. And you burnt the rice. You left it on the fire for too long. You left them together to play too long. Yes. If they play for a while together, wonderful. You want to get something done, wonderful. But be in tune. You can prevent it. You can be there. Or you can do your email in the same room maybe, so that you can be attuned at what's happening when children are young. But if they know that they can call you and that it pays off and it works, they will.
Okay.
When you come in, it brings peace. Be the peacemaker, not the judge. I always say, have a love house, not a courthouse. It's not about who is right, who is wrong. Everybody is right. They have their own experience that's valid for them.
Mm-hmm.
We need to listen to them and to create the situation that doesn't create struggle as much as we can. And struggles are part of life.
Yeah.
So you missed it, they're already struggling. Step 2, listen to everybody, like I said before. And listen over and over again until they either resolve it or got it out of their system, expressed it, and whatever it is. Hold the crying child. Listen.
Sometimes both are crying, so I hold both of them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, depending, both are crying, you may hold them both and validate their feelings, or hold one or the other, or if you have another person at home that can hold one, but often both of them want mommy to hold them. So that's you have to do that when that's what's wanted.
Yes, I think validate the feelings is the most important point.
Yes, but you have to be careful with that. Don't dramatize. I say that in the book all the time, but I notice that some parents, in spite of me saying that, are still making more of it than the child had in mind. Children often, that's why I say it's safer to validate the facts. You wanted grandma to come, or you wanted these blocks and you didn't look and your brother took it, or whatever it is, or he disturbed you. Then you don't invent for them emotions they didn't have. But sometimes using emotional words, you're feeling sad or you like grandma, would be clearer than you're feeling sad. Maybe he's just feeling disappointed, not sad.
Yeah.
So it's better to model when you express your feelings if you want to teach feeling words. And sometimes I have my questions about how we ignite the fire under feeling stronger and stronger. And children will end up happier if the feeling is not that big, and it may not have been that big.
Mm-hmm.
Children move on so quickly. So are we igniting feeling, or are we validating feeling that's there? That's my question. And I like to be sure that we are allowing the feeling that's there to be expressed, that we didn't teach them to make a bigger fuss and think that everything has to go their way, so that they can move on authentically at their own time. So don't validate with, oh no, what happened? Look at you, you're bleeding. Oh, it must be so terrible. Oh, to my brother. Oh, I know. It's so, what a bummer. It's like, sometimes I see people do that, and the child looks at them like a clown acting, which is good. But sometimes they start crying even more because, oh my God, I guess
it must be so horrible
than I thought.
Yes.
I just thought my block was gone, but according to my daddy, it's the end of the world. And I got blocked so badly. I was like, what's with you, Daddy? It's just a block. We don't teach them to make drama because we're too big, and it's causing lots of pain.
Yes, that's not what I meant. I just meant validate the feeling instead of negate. Yes. It's like, oh, nothing happened. Don't worry. Be happy. Like this.
What you don't want to deny feeling. That's as bad or worse. You don't deny feeling. You don't, and that's what I meant before, like distracting. Oh, look here. We started with infants. The baby cries and we jingle a little thing of them. It's like, look here, or here I'll put, have this, or pacifier. Just shut off your crying. Here.
Yes, exactly.
Have something goody. Here is some sugar.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely don't want to shut down emotions. But you don't want to flame them, throwing gasoline on them either. Let the tsunami be the size it's be.
Yes.
And it'll, the child will do his thing autonomously. And then they learn that they're rooted in themselves, and that makes them strong.
Yes.
And help them also to not be so affected by what other people, other people are angry at them or whatever. If they're rooted in themselves, they have strength, they have resilience.
Yeah, that was my next question. And my last, actually. So how can I teach them not to take it too personally when mommy is shouting or daddy is criticizing them or something like that?
Yeah. So that starts with, it starts as babies.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make them immune to needing approval, to caring about what a brain of another person thinks about them as opposed to what they think about them.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to raise a human being whose source about who I am, what's the self, is inside them, not outside. The belief he did it to me, he caused me to feel bad, he made me feel, that language in English is, I don't know if it's in German too. He made me feel, she made me feel. No one can make us feel but us. That's what we want to teach children, not by preaching to them, but by making their feelings count. So when a baby, people ask me about co-sleeping. Oh, my 3-year-old still wants to sleep with me. Wouldn't he be more independent if he slept in his own bed? I say, it's the other way around. What was his independent decision rooted in himself when he says, I want to sleep with you? His decision was to sleep with you.
Yes.
So when you sleep with him, that's when he becomes independent, because he learned how I feel inside in terms of where I want to sleep or whatever it is, what I want to eat within healthy availability. My feeling and how I see it inside is right. I can trust me. I don't have to look outside. Well, if you put them in their own bed and tell them you can cry a little, but you'll get used to it, it's good for you, what are you learning? Teaching them to be molested, in principle. To somebody else knows what's right for your body. Don't listen to yourself. Don't be independent. Look at other people, seek their approval. Same thing. We're doing it in many other ways. One of the big ways is praise and prizes and rewards. All those are putting the focus for the child on seeking acknowledgement and how do I know what to do on the outside. Oh, mommy said I'm good. I need to listen to other people to know if I'm good. Mommy says this friend of mine is nice. I should choose my friends based on what mommy or daddy say. Or this friend, and then, they become teenagers and they go, if they're used to external approval, then they're going to fall for peer pressure, molestation, drinking, all these things. And I'm not saying they will always do exactly that, but it makes them vulnerable because they're not rooted in themselves. So the best thing to teach them to not be hurt by others is to be rooted in themselves. As a mother, as a parent, let's say you see the other parent is yelling at your child, being angry. So I remember I was giving a session actually on the phone years ago, before it was on Skype or Zoom. And I heard some screaming. My husband was the babysitter with the three children. So I stopped the session because I heard him losing it, not being appropriate with the children. But I already taught the children. They knew when daddy has a tantrum, that's him having a tantrum. So by the time I went out, what I saw is the children running into the room to get this itty bitty camera, digital cameras that can take also videos. And I was hearing the last one coming, wait for me, start over, And then they were all in his face. At that point, he didn't have a tantrum anymore, so he acted it. He learned from me these things. So, and he was always a very playful person and loving to be the center of attraction and being the clown. So now they're videoing him doing this big drama of a tantrum. The issue and the anger was out the window already.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of stories of this kind where that's the empower part. And also the other side of it that helps children see that, to separate themselves from other, is to work with children on what in English we call empathy, noticing other people and noticing that it's about them. And the way I like to do it, even with 2-year-olds and 1-year-olds and 5-year-olds, in everyday life, let's say you go to a playground, and you can say to your child, you see that child at the top of the slide? Let's guess his feelings. Do you think he's scared? Let's say he's sitting there and not sliding right away. You can give some ideas, or maybe a child is crying. What do you think is going on for him? Or a child is just happy. Let's do guess what the children are feeling. Or daddy is coming home from work. Let's guess when he enters the door if he had a good day and if he's happy. Just look at his face, and then you do some sign language between you and the child. You know, if you do the white handkerchief, it means he's feeling great. If you do the red handkerchief, it's like he looks stressed out. So you can do all kind of games that are fun, of guessing, of putting the attention on the other rather than on the self. So daddy comes home angry, it's not about you. It's like, oh, you notice, he's angry. Let's ask him, let's help him tell us about his anger, and listen to him. And you take the child in your lap, and dad, you know, tells you what he's angry about, you or the boss or their worker or whatever it is. And you hold the child, and the child feels how relaxed you are. You give him a kiss, and you say like, oh yeah, daddy is having a hard time, or mommy is having a hard time, whoever it is, or the other child. So teaching that also helps them see that when the other person speaks to them, it's also not about them. Now, but when the thing is happening, if somebody is yelling, children are self-centered. It's very hard for them not to take it personally.
Even for adults. Yeah.
Exactly. So to hold them and to say, you know, Aunt Sarah is having, you know, is being upset, and maybe after, when they're done, and help them by modeling, validate the feeling of the adult who's yelling. You know, tell them, oh, that must have been really hard. You wanted to come home and have dinner ready, and you see the child is tearing apart your envelopes or whatever it is you're upset about. Rewind is another trick that I teach people to do, but maybe our time is getting short, so the time. So there's a lot of ways, but the main thing is really to make sure the child is rooted in themselves, not to tell them how you, in any way, not to imply that how they feel inside is not how to choose things, unless there's something unsafe, and of course to themselves or others. So sometimes we have to intervene, but even then we can validate the feeling. You wanted to cross the road after that ball, you wanted to catch it, to catch the cat, etc. I know how that was hard for you, so you validate the feeling, but not taking it personally. And modeling. Don't take personally what your spouse or mother-in-law say to you. Just listen, validate, let people be themselves. Don't be in their brains.
Yes. So now I have one really last question, because it just came up. What I hear very often, what comes up from many parents, is how do I react when my partner is getting angry at the kids? Because a lot of mothers tend to jump in, you know, and say, don't be so cruel, don't be so harsh on them, and the partner feels criticized, and that's not making it better.
No, don't say anything to the husband or the wife, you know. It's the other way around sometimes too, or the partner. What you say to the child. You may want to pick them up if it's too abusive and too bad. You can teach him to go away from abuse. So if the husband is literally, you know, name calling and yelling, you can pick up the child and say, let's go somewhere else. It sounds like dad needs to do some yelling and get some anger out. But depending on the child, on the situation, on the severity of things, it's what I said before. You can also hug the child and just whisper in the ears, looks like dad has a tantrum. And if they're really young, to even say out loud to the child, not out loud to the husband, it's not your fault. It's all right. He's just must be tired from work, or don't give excuses sexually. Just, it's his thing.
It's just focus on the child.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you have to remove the child. In sibling situation, if one child is being hurt, picking them up and removing them to safety, or the wind pushes them, it's the same thing. I have an article on my website, was in a magazine, called Your Child is Like the Rain. Mm-hmm. Treat everything like nature phenomena. So your husband is like the rain or the tsunami. Tsunami is coming and it's too strong and it's not safe. Take your child out of it. Teach them not to stand there and be abused. Mm-hmm. But also teach them compassion, because if it's not unsafe and it's just daddy having a tantrum, then you sitting with them and you're taking the child in your lap, and they can feel that your body is calm, that you're at peace, and you're just listening. And you validate the husband or the partner, and you're at peace, then they learn to do the same. Oh, this anger fit is happening in that person. It's not about me. My mommy loves me. I'm in her lap. Everything is fine. Yes. And yet you don't want to preach to the husbands. They really don't like that.
No.
And it's taking sides. It's the same teaching as with the siblings.
Yes, that's true.
And whether it's father and child, two children, two adults, don't take sides. Don't be courthouse. Just love the person who needs love at that moment.
Yeah. But you have to be able to not take it personally yourself.
Exactly. Exactly. But there are lots of other ways. If harm already done, if it's like he yelled and the child is crying and took it personally, then I also teach how to do doll therapy, how to play with them, or drawing therapy like I did with my child, or he did with the piano teacher. Play therapy with dolls, talking openly about it later, looking inside and helping the child come to terms and realize. And what's so good about it, it really creates resilience. So the child is empowered to know no matter what happens outside of me. So it's back to it's my core teaching. No matter what happens outside of me, I can have empathy. I can have compassion toward this other person. And I can still listen to me. I don't need them to not yell at me.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of feeling safe.
Yes. And you feel safe when you have you.
Yes, but when you're very young,
when you're very young, you don't have completely you yet. On the one hand, you're born with completely having you.
Yeah.
But as you become in the transition young years as a child, you're very dependent by your nature. You really want to please and you want the approval. So you need constantly to be reminded that you are fine. So sometimes you have to be told it's not your fault, it's fine, things happen. You just played with these envelopes and we're going to fix it and, let daddy express himself. And that is so important. That's like the core teaching of mine, is to raise children where the self and the reliance on the self is what gets strengthened over and over again. Then they can be adults that things can happen to.
Yeah.
Then the girlfriend can leave them and they don't think, oh my God, I can't handle it. They can handle it. The boyfriend leaves, the boss is angry, whatever is happening, they practice through their childhood being connected to themselves, not being dependent. That's independence. And that's another part of teaching independence. Your mother is yelling and you are independent. You have your own. But sometimes you have to validate. When daddy scream like that, you get scared. Tell me more about it and listen. And let them see that they get scared because they think it's about them. I think he won't love me. I think he's going to punish me. I think whatever the fear is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So not leaving the child alone with his emotions is actually the way how to raise independent people.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not the other way around, as
No.
you might think or as you read very often. Yeah? The more you leave him alone or her, the more independent
Be
they
the
become.
listener that connects the child back to himself.
Yeah.
And I sometimes do with the work, the 4 questions and turnaround with very young children. And
Really?
they don't feel that it's the work, like
Yeah.
instead of, is it true? If they come and say, my sister called me stupid, this is another real story, with this child who read wrong, didn't know to read well, the name on the caller ID. And she told him, she said to him, your reading sucks, you're stupid or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I did the work with him on that. And it's amazing how you can do with a young child, because when they say, she shouldn't, when I said to him, she shouldn't, instead of asking, is it true? I say, really?
Mm-hmm.
It's very simple. You have a live conversation. Yeah, really. Are you sure? I mean, didn't she? Yeah, she called me stupid. Well, what did you think? So instead of saying, how do you feel when you believe this thought? Because he doesn't know that he's believing a thought, right?
Yeah.
He's 4 years old or 5 years old. So it's like,
Yeah.
oh, so how does that feel to you when about her saying that? Oh, it feels yucky. I said, well, what do you say to yourself? I said, oh, that I'm stupid, etc. Well, are you? So you can be flexible and get him there that way. So you don't ask the question necessarily, who would you be without the thought? Because they already said, you kind of go like, are you really? So no. And that, like this particular child that I did this process with, I wanted to I did a full worksheet with, and I don't know how many of the listeners are familiar, but the full worksheet is more thorough. It has 6 different sections.
Yeah.
The last section is, what is it you don't want to happen again? Like in this case, the child doesn't want his sister to call him to say that his reading sucks. I was going to ask him that question. What do you not want her to do again? And he on his own said all of a sudden, we were on the phone. I mean, this is a child, this was a client. And he said to me all of a sudden of his own, I can't wait till she does something like that. Call me name again. That was great, So he was already there, ready to practice his strength.
Yes.
Practice, I'm not hurt by somebody else's thought about me because I know I'm not stupid. Or the thing where there is my famous story, it's on YouTube, of name calling, where one child in front of me was calling the other stupid, and I say, me too. And I give examples. And I invented some games where children and parents together can play and realize that people can tell them all kinds of things, and they can just find when there was an occasion that it was true. And usually they laugh.
Mm-hmm.
And we include funny things, like
Yes.
we go around the circle calling everybody in turns like stinky. She's like, yeah, the other day I was farting in the bathroom, or I was vomiting. Oh, I was so stinky. I was playing sports. I was so stinky, or whatever.
Yes.
But go into stupid and finding examples where you did something stupid. Just even one example, you go in circle, and we do it with a ball or a pillow, throwing into somebody's lap and saying to him, you're stupid, or you're mean, and the other person answers. That's how the game goes. Thank you. The first thing is thank you, and then yes, I can find it, and take your time to find it. And then they give an example, one example, and then they throw the pillow or ball to the next person, saying you are either the same word, if they decide the whole circle to do the same word, or different words. But that's another way that answer your question, how to empower that self-reliance, that distinction between needing approval. And it's not being inconsiderate, because the other person, we want to listen to them, and they're all right to feel what they feel. Yeah. We are the opposite. We're compassionate, but it's not about us, or it is about us. They're saying something true. Yes, I am stinky. Yes, I was mean. I remember 3 days ago, I did X, Y, Z. Oh, I was very stupid the other day. I was on the phone, cooking something and burning it while I'm on the phone right there.
Mm-hmm. So that it's not about to being right, but to say, oh yes, true.
We're all humans. We have all these funny stories. It's so funny. And then we're all laughter.
Yes.
Everything shows up as laughter. Next time somebody's screaming at me, I see with compassion, or I see something funny. It could be about something not serious, and they're just yelling, So there are lots of ways that I teach, and doll therapy, and drawing, and variety of ways that can't be as thorough here, but it gives you an idea that there's so many ways. And don't praise and don't give prizes. So those are external motivators. Okay. So the child practiced the violin because they want to, not because you gave them a sticker or praise on how they play.
Yeah. Okay. So just that the audience knows, you were talking about the work of Byron Katie, about the Judge Your Neighbor worksheet with this 4-year-old.
Yes, yes, which they can,
yes.
I a lot. It's just, I highly recommend that. And you can find information on my website, on her website. Read the book, Loving What Is.
And we have a whole interview about the work.
Yes, and I could do an interview about the work. It's kind of all I do. But also with the context of my knowledge.
Of course.
And everything, but it is a huge part of my work and my workshops. And we do also group exercises and variety of things that I invented, but they're rooted in this inquiry into what is actually true in reality, as opposed to our crazy thinking.
Absolutely. Yeah.
When the thinking is wonderful and says, oh, what a beautiful day, then that's fine. That's, enjoy it.
Yes.
When it says my child shouldn't, should stop drawing and come to bed, and that doesn't work. It flies in the face of reality, and we're starting a war.
Exactly.
And that doesn't work.
Yes.
But my book was written before I knew of Byron Katie, and people would tell me in the workshop that I sound like her. That's how I read her after. Yeah. But it's just as useful in the same direction, because actually what I was teaching always was in the same direction. And then her work adds so much to it in terms of specific technique that is so clear, clean, and powerful, and nails it on the head.
Yes, it does.
And it's working on yourself. I think it's very important to say we want the child to be rooted in themselves. You, the parent, must be rooted in yourself. And the best thing, I think that'd be my last sentence, the best thing a parent can do for a child is work on themselves.
Yes.
Questioning every thought, going, expressing what needs to be expressed, and getting clear so that you can be present. Because if you're present, nothing is ever wrong in the present. There could be a scraped knee, but that's not wrong. There could be a burnt cake, but it's not a problem. People will say, well, it is a problem. We have a party and we're supposed to bring the cake, or we have dinner with guests. No, it's not a problem. It's a party without this cake.
Yeah.
If we add the idea, it's a problem. Or the child didn't go to sleep early, he'll be tired in school. If he went to sleep really late, maybe he will be tired in school, but is that a problem or a wonderful experience he'll learn from?
Exactly. Yes.
So in the present, it's not a problem. So I say to parents, please work on yourself.
Yeah.
That's why Raising Our Children, Raising Ourselves, the title of my book. And create workshops. I come and give workshops, do sessions with me. I do them all over the world like this, on Zoom, on Skype, on phone, even by email. I even have a client who doesn't speak English, and she writes me, and she puts it through Google Translate, and she puts my answer through Google Translate, and it works. It amazes me.
Great.
I told her I'm not sure that would work, but
yes, that's what I thought.
she's learning. So any way, shape, or form, go to my website, naomialdort.com, or authenticchild.com, authentic parent, not parenting, authenticparent.com. And there's newsletter, there's lots of free videos, interviews, speaking. Just work on it.
We will put all these links on our website so people can check it out.
Wonderful. And thank you, Ines. It's a delight
thank you.
Being with you.
Thank you very much for being with us. And yes, it has been a great time.
Thank you.
Thank you.